Hey everyone, it's Jen. I am here today to do a second tutorial on these super fun, super colorful boho beads. This is technically a tutorial for Shawnee's Junk Journals. For one of our October events, we're doing a boho bead journal. Or, I'm sorry, not journal, but a boho bead swap. And I did a previous tutorial showing you one way to make these beads, and that's what we came up with, but today I'm going to show you another way. Now, you can do either one, whatever's more comfortable for you. The other video is going to show you how to use these wooden skewers. This is what they look like whole. You get those just at the grocery store or dollar store or whatever is best for you. This video is going to show you how to use straws. Now these straws are a super cheap box of bendy straws that I got at the grocery store. You can also use fast food restaurant straws. You can use coffee stirrers. That was a suggestion by Lynn. Any kind of straw or essentially a tube of some kind that has an opening in the middle, just like that. A lot of people out there will use pens or old markers. They'll take the casing from the outside and they'll use that. I find that straws are actually a lot easier because they're super easy to cut. Grab your scissors, cut it off, there you go. And I found out that they do actually hold up really well. They are very sturdy, despite being very not sturdy in their original shape. So I really like using these, but you can use whatever you have or whatever is most comfortable for you or easiest for you to get. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is get a piece of wire. Now this one I believe is 22 or 24 gauge, but any jewelry wire will do. I like this one because it's a little bit thicker than what a lot of people use. A lot of people will use something as thin as thread, or even thinner than that, and it just doesn't feel as sturdy to me. So I like having a little bit of a sturdiness to my wire, so that's why I use this size. Now, a lot of people will work directly off of the roll, but for me, it's a little bit easier to have a loose piece. So I cut about 12 or 13 inches. You would probably want to err on the too much side so that you don't run out, but 12 or 13 seems to be pretty good. Now, if you don't have round nose pliers, you can use needle nose pliers. But round nose pliers really are the easiest. The very first thing we're going to do is just make a loop at one end of our wire. So I'm just going to take those round nose pliers. Doesn't need to be too big. This is just so that you can put a jump ring through it or hang something on it, or whatever you want to do. You can see I have a little bit of a tail there, so once I have my loop, I'm just going to take that tail and I'm just going to wrap it around the wire. If it's too short, you can use some pliers to help you. In this case, I'll switch over to just my regular pliers. And all you're doing is just making a little loop. If you are like me and you have shaky hands, or it's a little more difficult for you to maneuver, leave yourself an extra piece there. I probably did mine way too short and now it's hard to bend around, but we'll get that. In the interest of time, I'll probably fix that later, but it's good enough for now. So I just twisted that little loop around, and once you've got a couple of twists on it, you can take some wire cutters and just snip off that little, sorry if my finger's in the way, snip off that little end so it doesn't poke anybody. For this thing, I like to have something underneath me to just catch any little bits of wire or anything I might drop. Okay, so now that we have a loop on one end of our wire. You can see that. Now it's time to start assembling the bead. Now I will admit I did a little bit of work ahead. I did take my straws and cut them into little pieces. You can tell it really doesn't matter what size you do. Any variety that you want to create, whatever length is comfortable for you, go ahead and cut your straws to that length. And then you want to decorate them. Now this is the fun part. I just sat down in front of a movie and took my little scrap fabrics. I started with a base of my scrap fabric, and then I added in fibers, paper. You can see I cut out some words from these old books, and those actually went right on top there. I did stain that one, ink that one a little bit. I just took words that jumped out at me, and I didn't do it with all of them. I just the ones that I felt like deserved a word. You can use old flowers, you know, flower petals from paper or fabric flowers. You can use thread, really anything you can find. Old paper scraps that aren't words, you can use those too. I do like the look I've seen out there of the people who do use paper. A lot of them will put Mod Podge over it, which just gives it that really nice texture, and it makes sure that the paper is going to hold up over time as well. I didn't do it with these ones, but I really do like the look of that. You can also use, you know, wire. Let's see, my finished one here has some wire, and I'll show you how to twist this wire into your actual bead, but you can always use wire separately before you put it all together. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is, I think I've just been in a red mood today. Red's easy to see. I'm gonna pick out, you know, in this one I did a large bead and then a small bead and a bead cap, but I think this time I'm just gonna do the large bead and my bead cap. Now if you don't have bead caps, that's totally okay, and if you don't know what a bead cap is, if you can see, these little guys are curved, so they're almost like little bowls. That will actually go on top of, the end of your bead to kind of keep everything inside. If you don't have these though, it's totally okay. You can use spacer beads. I believe there's even some tutorials out there on how to do it without a bead cap. I believe one of the methods is to actually melt the straw or melt the fabric or whatever you have on the outside. I probably would just use a silver bead or a spacer bead in place of that. But you can tell even here, you know, a lot of it, if you just keep building layers on that, a lot of it will kind of be pretty closed, pretty solid anyway. So I'm not sure that the bead cap is 100% necessary. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So this is going to be the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide on. This is totally optional. If you don't want to add anything to your end, that's totally okay. It can be really pretty with just the loop on it. I just like that extra little bling, so I'm going to put that on there. So I put my bead on first, and then I'm going to put my bead cap on, and I'm going to put it on just like a bowl, like I said before, so that the curved part is facing up or towards the bead that we're going to add. You can set this aside for a second. This is something you can do ahead of time, and there's a few options here. Unfortunately, because my straw is quite a bit bigger than my wire, if I were just to put this on here, it's gonna wobble around a lot. it definitely doesn't fit tightly in there. So what I did is I collected some junk beads. You could use pony beads, you could use any of your ugly beads, just whatever spare beads you have that you don't care about. These are not going to show, so it doesn't matter what they look like. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go in and we're going to fill our little straw. Now, if your beads are quite a bit smaller than your straw, you probably want to assemble this on the actual wire. But in this case, I just happen to know that these beads fit almost perfectly. One suggestion that I had from Lynn was to use coffee straws, the coffee stirrer straws. And that's actually a really great idea because they're quite a bit smaller. You can probably skip this step entirely. Now, I also know a lot of us don't have, you know, millions of beads. Some of us do, some of us don't. I'm just starting to build my collection, so finding some ugly beads or some beads I don't want was a little bit more difficult. I'm just using my pliers to push those in so that I can get them in there tightly. So finding, you know, I know finding these kind of throwaway, that's a little too big. Finding these throwaway beads, you know, for some people may not be quite as easy. In that case, there's lots of things you can use. You can throw in some scrap fabric and just push it down in there. You can use cotton balls. Anything that you can think of, even, you know, even seed beads, anything that just will help kind of fill that space. Now, it may be that that one didn't fit very well. Let's see if we can get this looped through. Now, it may be that, you know, you do still have a little space in there, and that's okay too. I actually kind of like having slightly, sorry if I'm off camera there, trying to find the bead inside. Okay, there we go. I like having slightly smaller beads in some of them because it gives it that cool, like, rattly sound when you shake it, and that just feels a lot more boho, I guess, to me. Okay, so you can see in this case I have strung my wire through my boho bead, and it sits right down there on the bottom of that loop that I made before. It's pretty strong inside. You can always add more beads if you don't, or cotton balls, or whatever you have. Scrap paper, scrap fabric, you can always add more if you need a little bit more in there. If you can't get the bead pushed down into your straw, just, like I said, use a pair of pliers. In this case, actually, it looks like we may not need that one. Okay, so just kidding, we'll skip that one. All right, now we're gonna do our bead cap, our second bead cap, and this time we're gonna face the bowl down so that it goes down over the boho bead, kind of like a little hat. Now you have a couple options here. You notice that I have a lot of wire left over. That is so that I can actually take this and I'm going to bend it down, kind of hold that bead cap in place so it doesn't run away. And then I'm going to take that wire and I'm going to wrap it. This particular bead didn't have any wire on it to begin with. I'm going to kind of straighten that. As you do this, you should be pulling it kind of tight so that both bead caps are sitting pretty strong on the ends. And now I'm just going to take it here and go right back up the other direction, but a little bit bigger. Now you can completely skip that step if you want. Now what I don't like is that my wire is now outside my bead cap and it's not attached in that nice long row there. So I'm actually gonna just take the end of it, stick it right underneath the edge of that cap and push it back up through the middle. This is totally optional. You can just let it sit on the outside of the cap if you'd like. It does anyway right here where we started this. This just makes it feel a little bit sturdier to me. I'm just gonna straighten that wire out a little bit. Okay. Makes it feel a little bit more sturdy to me to have it done that way. Now, of course, my bead cap is not sitting right on my bead, and that's okay. You can always go back and loosen it if you need to, or you can just kind of wiggle it around until you get it back in place. A lot of that too you can adjust when you're done. So I'm gonna let it be for now. I'm gonna stop fussing with it. Okay, now we've got this little piece again left over here at the end. I'm gonna add my red bead to match the other side, and then we're gonna create another loop. Can you see it? We're almost done. Amazing, isn't it? Now luckily I have a little bit more wire this time. You do want to make it kind of close, but you want to give a tiny bit of space so that you have room to wrap your wire around. I'm going to go about there. The great thing about the wire is that if it's too far away from your bead, you can always fix it. And in this case, it does look a little bit far away from the bead, but I'm gonna get rid of that space by wrapping my wire. Since I have that kind of nice longer piece, and if your little loop starts spinning around like mine just did, you can always take your pliers and just hold it in place like that and use your other hand, or if you have two pairs of pliers, you can use two pairs of pliers, or whatever you have on hand. In this case, I'm just going to use my hand. And I'm just going to spin that around, wrap it around until my bead is feeling like it's solid. My little red bead is feeling like it's solid. Now I do have a bigger loop on this side. That's okay. I don't really mind that. I think it gives it character. It gives it that homemade feel. I'm going to take my wire cutters and just trim off that little bit. Make sure to point it away from yourself so that the wire doesn't shoot up into your face. We don't want anybody losing an eye over boho beads. Although that would definitely be quite a story to tell, wouldn't it? Okay, and then I'm going to take my little pliers and push that end back in. And there you go. We have a beautiful boho bead with a straw as its base. Now you can always add a couple of jump rings to either end and throw some charms on there, or maybe a tassel or some other fibers, or if you want, you can put them all together and make a necklace, or, you know, whatever you want. Or they're perfect for hanging off your junk journals. So again, if you like using straws or the hollowed out tube version, this is a great video for that. If you prefer the skewers, go ahead and take a look at the other video. Either way, if you have questions, let me know, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks, bye.